The morning sunlight barely pierced the dusty blinds of David's tiny apartment. His worn shoes sat by the door, the soles peeling from months of constant use. He rubbed his tired eyes and glanced at the kitchen table, where 3 overdue bills lay stacked neatly, each one a reminder that life had stopped being kind. For weeks, maybe months, he'd been scraping by, juggling odd jobs, skipping meals, and pretending that everything was fine for the sake of pride. Today, though, felt heavier. There was a weight pressing on his chest, a subtle gnawing fear that maybe he had reached the end of his rope. He sank into the cracked leather of his chair and sighed, staring at the bills as if they were riddles he could solve with sheer will. The rent, the electricity, the loan he hadn't been able to pay for 2 months. Each one whispered the same cruel message: "You're failing." David's phone buzzed on the counter, a message from his younger sister, Emma. "Are you okay? Mom asked me to check in." He stared at it blankly. She didn't understand. No one did. He'd been working so hard to keep himself afloat, to keep the tiny flicker of hope alive. But some days that flicker felt like it might finally go out. He forced himself up, pulling on a worn jacket. Today, he had a chance to make a few dollars at the cafe downtown, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. Not really. As he walked through the streets, the chill in the air felt sharper than usual, and the city seemed indifferent to his struggle. People passed him by, buried in their own lives, their own worries, while he felt invisible. And then he saw her. A woman crouched on the corner, her clothes thin, her hands trembling as she held a small cardboard sign. "Hungry. Anything helps. God bless." He had seen countless strangers in his life, people asking for coins, food, or warmth. Most of the time, he walked past, pretending not to notice, convincing himself that he had nothing to give. But today, something in her eyes caught him off guard. It wasn't just fear or hunger. It was exhaustion, humiliation, and a quiet desperation that mirrored the very feelings he had been carrying for weeks. David hesitated. His wallet felt impossibly light, his own stomach tight with anxiety. He had barely enough for the bus home, let alone the $20 he could spare. And yet, his feet moved forward almost on their own, stopping a few feet from her. "Here," he muttered, holding out the last crumpled bills in his wallet. Her eyes widened, a flash of disbelief, followed by a trembling smile. Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. David nodded, turning away quickly before the sudden lump in his throat made him choke on words he didn't have. As he walked on, a strange warmth spread through him. He felt lighter somehow, though the bills on his kitchen table still loomed like shadows. But for the first time in days, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't in a long while. Hope. Maybe it wasn't much, but it was enough to keep moving. By the time he reached the cafe, he was lost in thought, imagining what the woman might do with the money. Would she buy food? Pay for a night in a shelter? Or maybe she'd simply give up, letting the world push her down once again. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he realized something essential. In that small, trembling gesture of giving, he had reminded himself that even when life seemed impossible, one small act could still matter. And unbeknownst to David, this single act, just a few bills given without expectation, would begin a chain of events neither he nor the woman could possibly imagine. Something that would challenge him, change him, and eventually reward him in ways he could never have anticipated. For now, though, he returned to the cafe, shoulders a little straighter, heart a little lighter, carrying the quiet satisfaction of someone who had done the right thing, even when it was hard. Little did he know, the story had only just begun. David walked the city streets with the stranger's face lingering in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her wide, trembling eyes and the way she had held the cardboard sign. Something about the raw vulnerability in her gaze had stayed with him. He wanted to believe he had done enough, given her a few bills, but an uneasy feeling nagged at him. Was it enough? Could a few dollars really change anything for someone who had clearly been surviving on the edge for months, maybe years? The question gnawed at him, weaving into every part of his day. When he took his order at the cafe, he barely tasted the coffee. His mind replayed the corner, the sign, her hands, her weary smile. The warmth he had felt right after giving her the money now carried a shadow, the uncertainty of whether his act had actually mattered. At work, David found it difficult to focus. The clatter of dishes and the hum of espresso machines felt distant, as if he were observing everything through a fog. His boss barked orders, demanding speed and precision, but David's thoughts were elsewhere. He kept replaying the moment on the street, the hesitation, the worry, the small hand tremble as she had reached for the money. What if she didn't eat? What if she just disappeared into the crowd and never benefited from his effort? By mid-afternoon, David found a quiet corner behind the cafe, away from the busy lunch rush. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his account, checking the remaining balance. Even after giving the money, there wasn't much left. Rent was due in 3 days, and the electricity bill still loomed over him. His own needs were pressing, tangible, unavoidable. A part of him whispered that he should stop. That kindness had a limit. Life had already demanded so much from him. Could he afford to give more? Or should he protect himself, as he had so many times before? That whisper grew louder with each passing minute, filled with logic and fear. What if I'm left with nothing? What if I can't pay my rent? But another voice, softer, steadier, reminded him of something he had almost forgotten. There had been times in the past when strangers had helped him, small acts that had made a difference. A neighbor lending sugar when he had none, a colleague covering a shift when he was sick. The memory of those gestures carried warmth, a quiet reminder that giving could come back in ways he didn't yet see. As the afternoon wore on, David's hesitation deepened. He returned to the corner where he had first seen her in his mind's eye, imagining what her life might be like now. Did she manage to get a meal? Was she safe for the night? Every question added weight to his conscience. The stranger had unknowingly stirred something in him, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Responsibility for someone else, a sense that he could make a meaningful difference in someone's life. On the walk home, he passed a small grocery store. A loaf of bread and some fruit sat behind the counter, tempting him. He had enough to buy a few small items, but only barely. For a moment, he thought about giving them to the stranger, to ensure she had more than just a few dollars. His hands shook as he imagined her surprise, the relief in her eyes, the unspoken gratitude that no one else might ever see. David paused outside the store, the cool evening air brushing against his face. Shadows stretched across the pavement, long and dark, echoing the doubts in his mind. A man approached, asking for directions to the nearest bus stop. The stranger had not appeared, but the presence of people around him reminded David that life moved forward, whether he acted or not. Each moment he hesitated. He risked losing the chance to create something meaningful. As he walked on, he thought of Emma, his sister. She had always been kind, always willing to give. She volunteered at the shelter, helped friends in need, and never expected anything in return. David realized he admired her for it. But more than that, he envied the certainty with which she acted. She gave because she knew it was right, not because it was convenient or safe. That night, David sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the ceiling. The bills still waited, the apartment still felt empty, and the pressure of life's demands pressed down harder than ever. And yet, he couldn't shake the thought of the stranger. Something within him refused to let go. The fear of giving more, of risking what little he had, battled with a stronger, quieter voice, the one that whispered he could do more, that one small act could matter more than he realized. Sleep eluded him. His mind raced through scenarios. What if he gave again and it backfired? What if he overextended himself? What if it wasn't enough? But he also imagined her relief, her gratitude, the possibility that his help could spark a ripple beyond his imagination. By morning, David had made a decision. He would return to the street corner, not with hesitation or doubt, but with intention. He would do what he could, even if it meant sacrificing some comfort for himself. He would help her in a meaningful way, ensuring that his act of kindness had a real impact. As he stepped outside, the city still waking around him, he felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. His wallet was lighter, his heart heavier with responsibility, yet a sense of purpose had settled in its place. Whatever happened next, he knew this choice would define more than just one day. It might define the person he was becoming. And though he couldn't see it yet, The path he was choosing would lead to events that neither he nor the stranger could possibly anticipate. Challenges, surprises, and life-changing consequences awaited. But David had taken the first step toward something far greater than himself. David's footsteps echoed on the uneven sidewalk as he made his way back to the corner where the stranger had sat. The city was alive with noise, car horns, footsteps, distant chatter, yet everything felt muffled, as if the world itself were holding its breath. He clutched his wallet, now lighter than before, feeling the weight of his decision more acutely than ever. Each step carried the tension of possibility. Would this gesture make a difference, or would it dissolve into nothing, swallowed by the indifference of the city? He rounded the corner and froze. She was there, crouched in the same spot, her hands wrapped around the cardboard sign. But something was different. Her posture was slumped even further, her head lowered, as if the world had pressed down on her with unbearable weight. David's heart sank. For a moment, he considered turning away, convincing himself that he had done enough yesterday. But the memory of her eyes, filled with quiet desperation, steeled his resolve. "Hi," he said softly, careful not to startle her. She lifted her gaze slowly, eyes wide, recognizing him immediately. A faint flicker of hope appeared in them. I thought you might not come back," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, a delicate thread in the hum of the city. David swallowed. "I'm here," he said simply. "I want to help more than yesterday." He reached into his wallet and pulled out the last of the bills he had set aside for groceries. He handed them to her, along with a small bag containing bread, fruit, and a warm thermos of soup. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, David thought she might collapse in gratitude. You didn't have to," she stammered. "Most people just walk past." "I know," David said, "but sometimes we have to do what we can, even when it's hard." She looked down at the food, then back at him, a fragile smile forming. Thank you so much." As she accepted the meal and money, something stirred inside David, a warmth that he hadn't felt in years. The gnawing anxiety about bills and responsibilities hadn't vanished, but it was now balanced by a strange, powerful certainty. He had done something meaningful. He had chosen kindness over fear. But the moment wasn't without tension. As they spoke, a man approached, his expression dark and questioning. "Hey," he said sharply. "What do you think you're doing? This corner belongs to the Shelter Outreach Program. You can't just hand out food like that." David's throat tightened. He hadn't anticipated confrontation. His mind raced. Was he overstepping, risking trouble for both himself and the stranger? The woman's eyes met his, wide and frightened. He could see the shame rising, the fear of being chased away, of losing this small chance at relief. I'm sorry," David said slowly. "I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to help." The man's expression softened slightly, but he still frowned. "You can't just hand money or food to everyone. Some people take advantage. It's not safe." David nodded, understanding the caution. "I'll be careful," he replied, "but I can't ignore someone in need." The stranger reached for his hand, a silent gesture of gratitude. In that moment, David realized that the impact of a single act of kindness was never just about the money or the meal. It was about dignity, hope, and trust restored, however briefly, to someone who had been overlooked by the world. After the confrontation, they moved a few feet down the street, finding a quieter spot. They ate in silence at first, sharing the warmth of the soup. David listened as she spoke. Her story unfolded slowly, of nights spent in cold shelters, jobs lost, and a family she hadn't heard from in years. Each word tightened something in his chest. The weight of her suffering was heavy, yet her voice carried resilience. By the end of their meal, a small connection had formed. The stranger introduced herself as Maria. She was cautious but polite, her gratitude spilling out in shy smiles and lingering glances. David felt a flicker of hope, not just for her, but for himself. He had been afraid of giving too much, but he had been reminded that sometimes courage isn't measured by what you keep, but by what you give. And then came the unexpected twist. As they were about to part ways, Maria pulled something from her bag. At first, David thought it was more money or a simple note of thanks, But it was something entirely different. A small, neatly folded envelope. He took it cautiously, curious yet wary. "It's nothing," Maria said quickly, almost brushing it off. I just want you to have this." David hesitated. His heart beat faster. Something told him this envelope wasn't ordinary. Something about the way she handed it over, the subtle weight, the careful fold, suggested there was more inside than a simple thank you. He opened it slowly, revealing a folded piece of paper with words written carefully in neat handwriting. His eyes scanned the message, and a shiver ran down his spine. The words were simple, yet carried a depth he hadn't anticipated. "Because of you, my life has changed. I hope one day you see how much your kindness matters." It wasn't money. It wasn't a gift he could spend. It was something more profound, a recognition, a proof that what he had done had created a ripple far beyond the corner where they had met. David looked at Maria, her eyes meeting his again. She nodded slightly, a silent affirmation. In that moment, he understood the power of what he had given. One act of kindness, small as it seemed, had already begun to shape the course of two lives, and perhaps more, in ways neither of them could yet imagine. As he walked away, the city bustling around him, David felt a surge of hope and purpose. The anxiety about bills, about work, about the future. It hadn't vanished, but it was lighter now. He had chosen to act, and that choice had already begun to transform his world. If this act of kindness touched your heart, hit the like button and subscribe to Acts of Hope. Share your own story of helping someone in need in the comments. You never know whose life you might change. David glanced back one last time. Maria was smiling faintly, eating the food he had brought. He knew this was only the beginning. Their lives were now intertwined in ways he could not yet predict. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a quiet certainty. Life had a way of rewarding courage, compassion, and hope, sometimes in ways we least expect. The next morning, David woke with a lingering sense of anticipation. The memory of Maria's smile, the envelope, and her words kept echoing in his mind. "Because of you, my life has changed." He repeated the phrase silently, unsure what it meant, yet feeling the truth of it somewhere deep in his chest. David didn't expect to hear from her again so soon. Yet by mid-morning, a small, handwritten note appeared under his apartment door. Curiosity made him freeze for a moment before carefully picking it up. The handwriting was unmistakable Maria's. "Meet me at the old community center at 5 p.m. There's something I need to show you." He hesitated. Why was she asking this? Did it have anything to do with the envelope? Could it possibly involve him in something he wasn't ready for? Part of him wanted to ignore it, to stick to his life, to avoid unexpected complications. But another part, the part that had just discovered the power of giving, urged him to go. By late afternoon, David found himself walking toward the community center. The streets felt different somehow, lighter but charged with anticipation. He arrived just as the sun began to dip below the skyline, casting long shadows across the brick building. He paused, drawing in a deep breath, and stepped inside. Maria was waiting. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I know this is unexpected, but I need you to see this." She led him to a small room filled with people, some young, some elderly, some weary from life's struggles. The air buzzed with quiet energy, a sense of purpose that was almost tangible. David recognized several faces from the neighborhood, people he had seen struggling, sitting on street corners, or standing outside small shops. Maria turned to him. "These are the people who have been helped because of your kindness," she explained. "I work with them, and your act inspired me to start a small initiative. Every day, we try to reach someone in need, but your generosity reminded me that even one person can spark change." David's heart raced. He felt both pride and disbelief. His small act, giving a few bills, a loaf of bread, a warm thermos, had rippled out in ways he could never have imagined. But before he could fully process it, Maria handed him a tablet showing photos, videos, and messages. People who had received help through her initiative were smiling, thriving, rebuilding lives. A young man had found a job, a woman had returned to school, a child had received proper meals for a week. It was overwhelming. David realized he had underestimated the power of one decision, one act, one gesture. Every small step of kindness created a chain reaction, touching lives he had never even met. But the act of giving didn't end there. David soon discovered another ripple he hadn't foreseen. One of the people Maria helped was connected to his workplace. A longtime colleague he had thought indifferent now approached him with an unexpected opportunity, a small freelance project with a generous payment. It wasn't huge, but it was exactly what David needed to stabilize his finances. Even more astonishing, his neighbor, who had witnessed his kindness, introduced him to someone looking for an honest, hard-working person for a part-time position, work that could supplement his income while allowing him to continue helping others. David was stunned. It seemed impossible, almost too good to be true. But he remembered something Maria had said. "Your act reminded me that even one person can spark change." Now, it wasn't just Maria. It was a network, a ripple spreading across lives in ways he had never anticipated. Yet tension remained. Not everyone was pleased with his newfound visibility. The man from the street corner, who had confronted him, appeared unexpectedly at one of the small gatherings Maria hosted. His tone was harsher than before. "I told you this wasn't safe," he snapped. "You can't just keep interfering with people's lives. You're crossing lines." David felt a surge of fear. Was his generosity now causing problems? Had he made a mistake by getting involved so deeply? Maria placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry about him. We're careful. You only inspire others to act kindly, nothing more." Still, David couldn't shake the tension. The stakes were higher now. Every act of kindness he performed, or facilitated through Maria, carried responsibility. It was no longer just about him or his immediate comfort. It was about real consequences, both positive and potentially risky. Over the next few days, David found himself deeply involved in helping Maria organize food drives, check on neighbors in need, and coordinate small acts of assistance. Each interaction tested his patience, empathy, and endurance. Some days, he felt emotionally drained. Seeing so much suffering, confronting bureaucratic obstacles, and managing skepticism from people who doubted their efforts, it was exhausting. Yet, with every challenge came moments of profound hope. A woman he helped thanked him with tears in her eyes. A young boy waved eagerly whenever he saw David in the neighborhood, and families he had never met before began greeting him warmly. Even his personal life began to change. His sister Emma noticed the transformation in him. "You seem lighter," she said one evening over dinner. "I can see it in your eyes. You're doing something meaningful." David nodded, humbled. He understood now that true fulfillment wasn't measured by money, status, or recognition. It was measured by the lives touched, the hope restored, and the courage to act even when the outcome was uncertain. But the ripple was far from over. Just as David began to feel comfortable with his growing involvement, Maria handed him another envelope, one similar to the first but heavier, thicker, and sealed with a small wax stamp. "What's this?" he asked, curiosity mixed with a hint of apprehension. "You'll see," Maria said, a mysterious smile on her face. "Open it when you're ready. It's important, and it will change everything." David's heart raced. He felt a thrill of anticipation and the sharp pang of anxiety. What could it contain? Was it another message of gratitude, a challenge, or something completely unexpected? One thing was certain. The story he had begun on that quiet street corner had grown far beyond anything he could have imagined. The ripples of kindness were spreading, consequences emerging, and life was about to test him in ways he wasn't ready for. As he walked home that night, the envelope clutched tightly in his hand, David realized that he was standing on the threshold of a transformation, one that would challenge his courage, faith, and heart. Whatever awaited inside that envelope, it would mark the beginning of a profound change, not just for him, but for everyone whose life he had touched. The suspense of what was to come weighed heavily, yet within that weight, David felt an undeniable surge of hope. He had stepped into a story bigger than himself, and he had no idea where it would lead, but he was ready to face it. David sat on the edge of his bed that evening, staring at the sealed envelope Maria had given him. Its weight in his hand felt heavier than paper and ink could account for. He traced the wax stamp with his fingertip, hesitant to open it. knowing that whatever was inside would change everything. He took a deep breath and slowly peeled back the seal. Inside, a carefully folded letter rested atop a small card. He unfolded the letter, scanning the words. David, because of your generosity and courage, lives have been saved, futures have been changed, and hope has been restored. There is something else you must know, something that will affect your life as profoundly as you have affected ours. Come to the park tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and see the difference you've made firsthand. His heart pounded. The park? What could possibly happen there? Curiosity battled with exhaustion. Could it be a public acknowledgement, a reward, or something he could never have anticipated? The next morning, David arrived at the park. The air was crisp, the sun spilling golden light across the playground and benches. A crowd had gathered, some familiar faces, some strangers, all looking expectantly toward the center. Maria approached him, her face calm but radiant. "Are you ready?" she asked. David nodded, though his hands were slightly trembling. Maria led him to the center of the park, where a small stage had been set up. As he stepped closer, he saw families he had helped through her initiative. Children he had never met ran to hug him. Elderly neighbors smiled warmly, some wiping tears from their eyes. Each person held a small sign. "Thank you, David." The weight of it hit him all at once. He had only intended to help a stranger. Yet here he was, surrounded by dozens of people whose lives had been touched by his act, and by the ripples it created through Maria's efforts. He felt a lump in his throat, his heart swelling with emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Maria handed him a microphone. "You've been part of something bigger than yourself," she said. "Would you say a few words?" David's voice shook at first, then steadied as he looked at the faces before him. I didn't do this alone," he said. "I just helped a stranger one day. And it turns out that even the smallest act can grow into something much bigger than we imagine. Each of you has reminded me that kindness is stronger than fear, that hope can thrive even in the darkest corners, and that our lives are defined by how we choose to live and give." The crowd erupted in applause. Tears streamed down faces. Children clung to his legs. Mothers smiled at him with gratitude. And he felt, for the first time in years, that his life had purpose beyond struggle, beyond worry. Then Maria stepped forward with a small box. "David, there's one more thing," she said. "Something that represents the change you've created." She opened the box to reveal a set of keys. "This is a small community center, a place to continue helping people, providing food, shelter, and support. It's yours to manage with our team. You've inspired us all, and we want you to continue spreading hope." David's jaw dropped. His mind raced. The financial worries, the late bills, the fear of scarcity. All of it suddenly seemed smaller in the face of what had unfolded. He felt gratitude, amazement, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. The opportunity to help wasn't just personal anymore. It had become a mission. Tears filled his eyes as he turned to Maria. I don't know what to say." "Just keep doing what you started," she replied. "One act of kindness can create a lifetime of change." That day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, David felt something profound shift inside him. He realized that life's true rewards weren't measured in money, comfort, or recognition, but in the lives touched, hope restored, and courage acted upon. His small choice to help a stranger had transformed him, and in turn, hundreds of lives around him. Later that evening, as he walked home, David reflected on the journey. The fear he had felt, the hesitation, the struggle, all of it had been necessary. Without the challenge, there would have been no growth, no discovery, no ripples spreading across the city. And the person he had become, stronger, braver, more compassionate, was a direct result of one simple, human act, giving when it was hardest to give. David smiled softly, thinking of Maria, the people he had helped, and the countless acts of kindness that would continue to spread because he dared to care. The city lights shimmered around him, but for the first time, they didn't feel cold or indifferent. They felt alive, full of possibility. He understood now that life was never about what we take. It was about what we give. And in that moment, David knew he was ready to face whatever came next, with courage, hope, and the unwavering knowledge that one person truly can change the world. If David's story inspired you, hit like, subscribe, and join the Acts of Hope community. Share your own story of kindness or hope in the comments. You never know whose life you might change next.